I'm Lauren Hayes, 34, and until yesterday, I thought family meant something sacred. I spent 3 years caring for my dying father while my brother Tyler lived his life. Yesterday, during what should have been a peaceful family dinner, Tyler stood up, dumped hot chicken soup over my head, and coldly stated, "You have 15 minutes to leave my family." 15 minutes to grab whatever I could as my skin burned and soup dripped down my face. Nobody moved to help. Nobody objected. I fled with a suitcase, my laptop, and the crushing realization that blood means nothing when money is involved. Before I share how my world imploded, tell me where you're watching from. Drop a like if you've ever discovered someone wasn't who you thought they were, and subscribe to join me on this journey of betrayal and unexpected strength. 3 years ago, I had a thriving career as an investigative journalist in Chicago. My byline appeared regularly in a respected newspaper, and I was building a reputation for exposing corporate corruption. Then came the call that changed everything. Dad had been diagnosed with progressive supranuclear palsy, a rare brain disorder that would slowly rob him of his mobility, speech, and eventually his life. My brother Tyler lived just 20 minutes from our childhood home in Connecticut while I was a 2-hour flight away. Despite the distance, Dad and I had always been close. We spoke weekly, and I visited whenever I could. Tyler, on the other hand, maintained what I'd call a cordial but distant relationship with our father after our mother died when we were teens. "Lauren, you don't need to uproot your life," Dad insisted during that first phone call. "Tyler is nearby," but I knew better. Tyler was physically close but emotionally unavailable. His wife Rebecca had never hidden her impatience with family obligations, always finding excuses to miss gatherings or leave early when they did attend. When I arrived at the hospital, Tyler was there but already checking his watch. "The doctor says he'll need full-time care eventually," he said. "I can look into nursing homes." I still remember how Dad's face fell at those words. He'd spent 40 years building our family home, pouring love into every corner. The thought of him ending his days among strangers broke my heart. "I'll stay," I announced, surprising even myself. "I can work remotely for a while." That while turned into 3 years. My editor reluctantly approved a temporary remote arrangement that eventually became a resignation when Dad's condition worsened. I moved into my old bedroom and transformed our living room into a hospital suite as Dad lost mobility. Tyler and Rebecca visited sporadically at first, then less frequently. Rebecca always seemed to be examining the house, noting changes or improvements I'd made to accommodate Dad's wheelchair. "You've certainly made yourself comfortable here again," she remarked once, her smile not reaching her eyes. What I didn't realize then was that Rebecca had been nursing resentment toward me for years. She'd always viewed the family home as their eventual inheritance, a property in a now valuable neighborhood that could fund their increasingly lavish lifestyle. My presence threatened that assumption. 6 months into my caregiving role, I noticed small things disappearing around the house: family photos, some of Mom's jewelry, Dad's collection of vintage watches. When I mentioned it to Tyler, he dismissed my concerns. "You're stressed and imagining things, Lauren. Maybe you should take a break." A break wasn't possible. Dad's condition progressed faster than expected. He needed help with eating, bathing, and eventually even communicating. I learned to interpret his blinks and slight hand movements, developing a language between us that no one else bothered to learn. One afternoon, I overheard Rebecca on the phone in our garden while she thought I was upstairs with Dad. "She's completely manipulating him," Rebecca was saying, acting like some kind of saint while positioning herself for everything. "Roger can barely speak now, so who knows what she's putting in his head." I was stunned. I'd sacrificed my career, my apartment, my independence, all to care for the father I loved. The suggestion that I was manipulating him for personal gain was so absurd it left me speechless. My friend Cassandra warned me during one of our rare coffee meetups when Dad's home health aide could stay for an hour. Lauren, I don't want to alarm you, but I heard something disturbing at my dental office, Cassandra said hesitantly. Rebecca and Cassandra used the same dentist. Rebecca was telling another patient that your father might not be mentally competent to make decisions anymore, and she and Tyler might need to pursue guardianship. I felt physically ill. Dad had good days and bad days, but his mind remained sharp even as his body failed him. He still read the newspaper daily, using a special page-turner I'd rigged up. He still beat me at chess using a system of eye movements to indicate his chosen moves. 2 months before he died, Dad asked me to help him contact his lawyer, James Merritt. James had been Dad's friend for decades and handled all his legal affairs. Private Dad managed to communicate, indicating he wanted to see James alone. I respected his wishes and took the opportunity to grocery shop while James visited. When I returned, James was packing up his briefcase. "Your father is an extraordinary man, Lauren," he said, squeezing my hand. "And he knows exactly what he's doing." I didn't press for details. If Dad wanted me to know, he would find a way to tell me. Dad passed away peacefully in his sleep a month ago. The funeral was well attended. He'd been respected in our community as a high school principal who'd changed countless lives. Tyler and Rebecca sat in the front row beside me, accepting condolences with practiced solemnity. I noticed Rebecca touching the sleeve of Dad's favorite suit as they closed the casket, her expression unreadable. After the service, James approached me. "There will be a formal reading of the will next week. Your father was very specific about how he wanted things handled." Tyler overheard and stepped closer. "Shouldn't we just handle this privately, James? No need for formalities." James fixed Tyler with a steady gaze. Roger's instructions were explicit. "Tuesday, 10 a.m., my office. Both of you need to be there." As James walked away, I caught something unsettling in Tyler's expression, a flash of anger quickly concealed behind a grieving son's composure. Little did I know, it was just a preview of what was to come. The morning of the will reading arrived with an appropriately gloomy sky threatening rain. I dressed carefully in a simple black dress, nothing fancy but respectful. When I arrived at James's downtown office, Tyler and Rebecca were already seated in the conference room. Rebecca wore designer clothes that seemed out of place for the occasion, a statement of status rather than mourning. Lauren Tyler acknowledged me with a curt nod. Rebecca didn't look up from her phone. James entered carrying a leather portfolio. "Thank you all for coming. Before we begin, I want to say that Roger was of sound mind when he made these arrangements, which were updated 6 months ago." Tyler shifted in his chair. 6 months ago, but he could barely communicate then. "Your father and I developed quite an efficient system," James replied. "And we had 2 independent physicians certify his cognitive clarity." James began reading the formal language of the will, and I half listened until I heard my name. "To my daughter Lauren, who returned home to care for me in my final years, sacrificing her career and personal life to ensure I could remain in the home I loved. I leave the family residence and property at 247 Maple Street, along with its contents. I also leave her 70% of my remaining financial assets with the hope that she will use these resources to rebuild the life she put on hold for me." The room fell silent. I sat frozen, genuinely shocked. Dad had never discussed this with me, James continued. "To my son Tyler, I leave my collection of watches, my workshop tools, and 30% of my remaining financial assets." Tyler's face flushed dark red. "This is bullshit," he spat out. 70-30. The how she manipulated him while he was vulnerable. Rebecca stood up so quickly her chair tipped backward. "We all know what happened here. 3 years of isolation and influence while he was declining. How convenient for you, Lauren." I found my voice, though it trembled. "I had no idea. Dad never told me." "Save it, Tyler. Cut me off. We're contesting this." Dad wasn't in his right mind. James remained calm. As I mentioned, Roger anticipated this reaction. I have documentation from 2 geriatric specialists confirming his mental competence, along with video recordings of our sessions discussing his wishes. Tyler faltered momentarily. "Your father was quite thorough," James replied. "He wanted to ensure his intentions couldn't be misconstrued." Rebecca grabbed her designer handbag. "This isn't over. Not by a long shot. Come on, Tyler." They stormed out, leaving me sitting in stunned silence with James. "I didn't ask for this," I finally said. "I never expected." He knew that James replied gently. "That's precisely why he made these arrangements." The estate wasn't vast, but was significant. Beyond the house, which had appreciated considerably in our desirable neighborhood, Dad had saved prudently throughout his career and had wise investments. All told, the inheritance would allow me to restart my life comfortably. That evening, Tyler called, his voice carefully controlled. "I've had time to think," he said. "Maybe I overreacted. Family shouldn't fight over these things." His sudden change in tone made me wary, but I wanted peace. "I agree. Look, Tyler, I'm happy to discuss how we can make this fair. Why don't you come for dinner tomorrow? We can talk it through like adults." I accepted, desperate to preserve whatever family connection remained after Dad's death. When I arrived at Tyler and Rebecca's modern suburban home the next evening, Rebecca greeted me with an artificial smile that didn't match the coldness in her eyes. "Lauren, so good of you to come. We've invited Neil Jenkins to join us. He's an old friend who works in real estate development." Neil was a smooth-talking man in his 40s with an expensive watch and perfect teeth. Throughout dinner, he asked casual questions about the family property, its acreage proximity to downtown, the age of the house. "Your father's land is in a prime location," Neil remarked. "The town's expanding that direction. Commercial zoning would make it incredibly valuable." I felt increasingly uncomfortable as I realized this wasn't a reconciliation dinner, but a business meeting. "I'm not interested in selling Dad's house. He loved that place." Tyler's smile tightened. "We should discuss options, Lauren. Sentimentality aside, that property could set all of us up very well." The conversation grew tense as I firmly refused to consider selling. Rebecca became visibly agitated, and Neil exchanged knowing glances with Tyler. As the meal concluded, Rebecca brought out soup for dessert, an odd choice that should have been my warning. "An old family recipe," she explained unconvincingly. When I again refused to discuss selling the property, mentioning Dad's wish for me to live there, Tyler snapped. He stood up, grabbed my bowl of still hot soup, and dumped it directly onto my head. "You have 15 minutes to leave my family," he said through clenched teeth. "Get your things and get out." The soup burned my scalp and ran down my face, staining my clothes. Rebecca smirked while Neil looked away in awkward silence. Not one of them moved to help me. In shock and humiliation, I grabbed my purse and fled to my car, soup still dripping from my hair. As I drove away, the reality of what just happened began to sink in. This wasn't just about an inheritance. This was a complete severing of what little family I had left. The first night after the soup incident, I slept in my car in a Walmart parking lot. I'd fled Tyler's house with just my purse keys and the clothes on my back, clothes still damp and smelling of chicken soup. I couldn't return to Dad's house, my house, because I didn't have the keys with me. They were in my suitcase at Cassandra's apartment, where I'd been staying temporarily since the funeral, waiting for the estate to settle. I tried calling the family lawyer, James, but got his voicemail. It was nearly midnight after all. The indignity of my situation struck me as I reclined the driver's seat as far as it would go, using my light jacket as a makeshift blanket. 3 days ago, I had inherited a house and substantial assets. Tonight, I was essentially homeless. Sleep came in restless patches, interrupted by parking lot lights and the occasional security patrol. I woke at dawn with a stiff neck and the overwhelming urge to shower. The soup had dried in my hair, making it stiff and smelly. I drove to a gas station, bought a bottle of water, and used the bathroom to clean up as best I could. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Eyes, red-rimmed hair, matted expression, hollow with shock and exhaustion. "Get it together, Lauren," I told my reflection. "You're a journalist. Start thinking like one." My first call was to Cassandra, who answered groggily. "Lauren, it's not even 7. What's wrong?" When I explained what had happened, her reaction was immediate. "Come here, now. I'll make coffee and breakfast." Cassandra's one-bedroom apartment wasn't spacious, but her couch opened into a decent bed, and more importantly, she offered safety. After a long shower that finally removed all traces of soup from my hair, I sat wrapped in a borrowed bathrobe while Cassandra made breakfast. "I don't understand," she said, setting down a plate of eggs. "Why would Tyler do something so extreme? It's just vicious." "I think he and Rebecca had plans for that property long before Dad died," I replied, picking at my food despite my hunger. "You should have seen how they brought in this developer friend during dinner. The whole reconciliation thing was a setup." After breakfast, I checked my phone and found it flooded with notifications. Tyler had been busy overnight. There were angry texts from cousins I rarely spoke to, accusing me of elder abuse and manipulation. My email contained similar messages from family, friends expressing their disappointment in my behavior. He's launched a smear campaign, I realized, showing Cassandra the messages. She scrolled through them, her expression darkening. "This is character assassination. He's trying to isolate you completely." The worst blow came when I tried accessing my bank account online. A message appeared stating the account had been frozen pending legal investigation. I called the bank in a panic. "I'm sorry, Miss Hayes," the customer service representative explained after verification. "There's a legal hold on your account related to an estate dispute. I can't provide more information." Without access to my modest savings, I was truly stranded. The estate settlement that would give me Dad's assets could take months, especially if contested. I had no income, no home, and apparently a rapidly deteriorating reputation. 3 days later, James finally reached me with disturbing news. "Tyler filed a will contest the day before your dinner," he explained. "He's alleging undue influence and claiming your father lacked mental capacity. He's also filed for an emergency injunction to prevent you from accessing the property or accounts until it's resolved." "Can he do that?" I asked, my voice shaking. "He can try," James replied. "The injunction is temporary, and we have strong evidence of your father's competence." "But Lauren, there's something else. Tyler has filed a police report alleging you misappropriated funds and property while caring for your father." The accusation felt like a physical blow. That's insane. I sacrificed everything to care for Dad." "I know," James said gently, "but we need to take this seriously." These allegations, however, false, could have criminal implications. The next week passed in a blur of anxiety. I spent hours on Cassandra's couch, alternating between panic attacks and making lists of everyone who could corroborate my care of Dad. I reached out to former colleagues for freelance work only to receive awkward rejections. One finally admitted they'd heard concerning things about me. Even my old journalism mentor, a man who had championed my career for years, sent a brief email stating he couldn't provide a reference given the current circumstances. Tyler had been thorough. Whatever story he was spreading had reached far into my professional network. On my 10th night at Cassandra's, I woke to find her sitting at her kitchen table at 2 a.m., looking worried. "What's wrong?" I asked. She hesitated. "My boss called me in for a meeting today. Apparently someone contacted the dental office, suggesting I might be harboring someone under investigation for elder abuse. He said it could affect our practice if patients found out." "Tyler," I whispered. "He's trying to pressure you to kick me out." "I would never," she assured me. But Lauren, this is getting scary. They're systematically cutting off every support you have. The next morning, I returned from a walk to find my car vandalized. Someone had spray painted "thief" across the driver's door in bright red letters. Underneath my windshield wiper was a note, "Give up the house or worse will come." Cassandra found me sitting on the curb beside my defaced car, something breaking inside me. "I can't fight this," I whispered. "Maybe I should just sign whatever Tyler wants. I never asked for the house anyway." She sat beside me, putting an arm around my shoulders. "That's exactly what they want you to feel. Defeated. Alone. But you're not alone, Lauren. Everyone else believes I manipulated my dying father," I said bitterly. "My reputation is destroyed. I have no money, no job prospects. Not everyone," Cassandra corrected. "I believe you. James believes you. And I bet there are others who knew your father who would stand by you too." She was right about one thing. I wasn't entirely alone. But with each passing day, the circle of people I could trust was shrinking, and my resources were dwindling to nothing. That night, as I lay awake on Cassandra's pull-out couch, I hit my lowest point. The thought of surrendering to Tyler's demands, signing away my inheritance, possibly even confessing to things I hadn't done, seemed almost appealing if it meant ending this nightmare. Then my phone lit up with an unexpected text message from a number I didn't recognize. "Miss Hayes, this is Maria Jimenez. I was one of your father's home health nurses during his final year. I've heard disturbing rumors about you that contradict everything I witnessed. If you need someone to speak the truth about your care of your father, please contact me." I stared at the message through tears, feeling the first flicker of hope in days. Someone else knew the truth. Someone was willing to stand up and say it. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't fighting a completely lost cause after all. The morning after receiving Maria's text, I met James at a small cafe far from Cassandra's apartment, paranoid that Tyler might be monitoring my movements. James arrived with a leather briefcase and a grave expression. "I've reviewed all the legal filings," he said after ordering coffee. "Tyler isn't just contesting the will, he's constructed an elaborate narrative painting you as manipulative and financially abusive." Based on what evidence, I asked. James slid a folder across the table. "Most concerning are these bank records, showing unusual withdrawals from your father's accounts over the past 2 years." I flipped through the statements, my confusion growing. "These aren't right. I never made these withdrawals. Dad gave me access to his accounts for household expenses and medical bills, but these," I pointed to several large transfers. "I never made these." "That's what I suspected," James nodded. "The timing is suspicious. Most of these withdrawals occurred when you were verifiably at doctor's appointments with your father." I checked the medical records. So someone else accessed his accounts. I asked, the implication dawning on me. "Someone who knew when you'd be out of the house," James confirmed. "But proving that will be challenging." I mentioned Maria's text, and James brightened. "Nursing staff testimony would be invaluable. Any professional who regularly entered the home could speak to the conditions and your father's mental state." After meeting with James, I contacted Maria, who agreed to meet me at the same cafe the following day. Maria was in her early 40s with kind eyes and the efficient demeanor of someone accustomed to managing crises. She arrived in scrubs, coming directly from another patient's home. "Miss Hayes, Lauren," she began. "I wanted to reach out because what I'm hearing about you contradicts everything I observed during the year I cared for your father." "What exactly are you hearing?" I asked. "That you isolated your father, prevented family visits, misused his funds, and possibly even neglected his care," she replied. "It's absurd to anyone who was actually in that house." Maria explained that during her weekly shifts, she witnessed my dedicated care and the special communication system I developed with Dad. More importantly, she had documented Tyler and Rebecca's rare visits in her nursing note. "Standard procedure," she explained. We log all visitors for continuity of care. Your brother and his wife visited only 4 times in the year I was there. Always brief, always when your father was asleep or heavily medicated for pain. Did you ever see Rebecca alone in the house? I asked, remembering the disappearing valuables. Maria's expression shifted. Once about 8 months ago. I arrived early for my shift and found her in your father's office. She claimed she was looking for family photos, but closed the drawer she was searching very quickly when I entered. This information aligned with the timing of several missing items and unauthorized bank withdrawals. Maria agreed to provide a sworn statement about her observations and the visitor logs from her nursing notes. Energized by this first real evidence, I returned to Cassandra's apartment and opened my laptop. A notification popped up showing my cloud storage was nearly full. Curious, I checked the recent backup files and found something unexpected, a complete mirror of my email account that I hadn't initiated. Someone's been accessing my emails, I realized aloud. Cassandra looked over my shoulder at the screen. How is that possible? My password. It was Dad's birthday, followed by Mom's initials, something Tyler would easily guess. I felt foolish for using such an obvious combination. Digging deeper into the cloud backup, I discovered dozens of screenshots of my emails with James' dad's doctors and the home care agency. More disturbingly, I found draft emails created in my account but never sent emails I hadn't written. One addressed to Dad's primary physician, asked about alternative treatments, and questioned if comfort measures only might be appropriate given the financial burden of continued care. They were setting me up, I whispered, showing Cassandra, creating a paper trail that made it look like I was pushing to end Dad's treatment for financial reasons. James connected us with Diane Reynolds, a private investigator who specialized in financial fraud cases. Diane was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who listened to our evidence without expression before taking detailed notes. Follow the money, she advised. Your brother's actions seem financially motivated, but to what extent? Over the next week, Diane uncovered troubling information. Tyler had significant gambling debts, nearly $200,000 to various creditors. His construction business was floundering with multiple liens against it. Rebecca's social media portrayed a lifestyle their income couldn't possibly support. Most significantly, Diane discovered a connection between Neil Jenkins, the developer at the infamous soup dinner, and Tyler. Bank records showed payments from Neil's company to Tyler dating back 18 months long before Dad's death. These look like consulting fees, Diane explained, but your brother's company doesn't provide consulting services. They're construction contractors. James examined the documents. These could be interpreted as kickbacks, especially if Neil's company was planning to develop the property. The pieces were falling into place. Tyler and Rebecca had been secretly planning to sell Dad's property to Neil for commercial development, likely expecting to inherit it after Dad's death. When the will revealed I had inherited the property instead, their financial house of cards began to collapse. Further investigation into Neil Jenkins revealed a pattern of similar projects, buying family properties in desirable locations, often after convenient deaths or familial disputes. In 2 cases, elderly homeowners had changed their wills shortly before dying, leaving property to previously estranged family members who quickly sold to Neil's company. This isn't just about your inheritance, James concluded after reviewing Diane's findings. I believe your brother and Neil Jenkins have been conspiring on this for a long time. Your father may have discovered their plans. That night, I remembered something Dad asking to speak privately with James, 6 months before his death, around the time he updated his will. Had he discovered Tyler's scheme? Was leaving me the property his way of preventing it from falling into Neil's hand? The next morning, Diane called with another revelation. Rebecca's brother works for the city planning department, she reported. He's been involved in several zoning changes that benefited Neil's developments. I felt a chill. So this is bigger than just our family property. Much bigger, Diane agreed. And potentially involves public corruption. Armed with mounting evidence, I accessed my laptop's backup system and discovered something: critical cloud backups of photos I'd taken, documenting Dad's care, including several showing Tyler and Neil meeting at our house while I was out getting groceries. The timestamp on one photo was just days before Dad asked to speak privately with James. Dad knew, I realized. He figured out what Tyler was planning. As the pieces came together, the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. Tyler and Rebecca had been systematically stealing from Dad while I cared for him. They had a deal with Neil to sell the property once they inherited it. When Dad changed his will to leave the property to me, they embarked on a campaign to discredit me and force me to relinquish my inheritance through a combination of legal pressure, reputation, destruction, and intimidation. The soup incident wasn't just a moment of anger. It was a calculated humiliation designed to break me completely when their other tactics hadn't worked. For the first time since that terrible dinner, I felt a surge of determination replacing my fear and confusion. They had underestimated me. They forgot I was an investigative journalist before I was a caregiver. They didn't realize that gathering evidence and exposing corruption was literally my professional training. We need to document everything I told James and Diane. Every piece of evidence, every connection, every inconsistency in their story. What are you thinking? James asked. I straightened my shoulders. I'm thinking it's time to stop running and start fighting back. Armed with the evidence we'd gathered, James helped me file for restraining orders against Tyler and Rebecca. The court granted temporary orders based on the car vandalism and threatening note, but the hearing for permanent orders was scheduled for the following month. It's a start, James said cautiously, but the real battle will be the will contest. Our strategy was to methodically build our case while seeking witnesses who could testify to Dad's mental competence and my dedicated care. Maria Jimenez provided her nursing notes and a powerful affidavit describing my relationship with Dad. Two of Dad's doctors also agreed to testify about his cognitive clarity despite his physical limitations. Meanwhile, Tyler escalated his smear campaign. A local news blog published a story titled "Family Estate Dispute Raises Elder Abuse Concerns," carefully worded to avoid outright libel while implying I had taken advantage of my father. The reporter Sam Walters had gone to high school with Tyler and quoted family sources extensively, while giving only cursory mention to my side. When I called Sam to protest the one-sided coverage, his response chilled me. Look, Lauren, I've known your brother a long time. He showed me some pretty convincing evidence, bank records, emails. If you want to give your side, I'm listening, but it doesn't look good. Those emails were fabricated, I insisted. The bank withdrawals weren't made by me. That's not what the timestamps and account access logs show, Sam replied. And honestly, Tyler's story makes sense. You left a successful career to move back home right when your father's health declined. Now you've inherited the bulk of his estate. Connect the dots. After that conversation, I realized how effective Tyler's narrative was. On the surface, without knowing the details or my relationship with Dad, it did look suspicious. I'd need more than just my word to counter this perception. I reached out to former journalism colleagues, hoping they might help investigate Tyler's claims, or at least provide me with a platform to tell my side. The responses were devastating. I'm sorry, Lauren, but this is a messy family dispute with potential legal implications. We can't get involved. With your reputation under question, we need to maintain distance for now. Maybe once this is resolved, we can talk about your next steps. One former editor was more direct. Tyler sent us documentation suggesting you manipulated your father and misappropriated funds. If even half of it is true, I can't be associated with you professionally. The isolation strategy was working. My professional network, the relationships I'd spent years building, was crumbling under the weight of Tyler's accusations. Even applying for basic jobs became impossible as the story spread. I submitted applications for writing positions at several companies only to receive prompt rejections or no response at all. A coffee shop manager actually recognized me during an interview and abruptly ended our conversation. "We're looking for someone with a different background," he said, awkwardly. Financial pressure mounted as my meager savings dwindled. Cassandra was covering groceries and refusing to accept rent, but I couldn't impose indefinitely. The frozen estate meant I couldn't access Dad's house or assets, leaving me in limbo. The escalation continued when Cassandra received an anonymous letter at her workplace, a dental office where patient confidentiality was paramount. The letter suggested her practice might face community scrutiny for harboring someone under investigation for elder abuse. "My office manager is freaking out," Cassandra admitted. "The practice can't afford any hint of controversy. They're trying to make you choose between your job and helping me," I realized. "I should find somewhere else to stay." "Absolutely not," Cassandra insisted. "That's exactly what they want. We need to stand firm." 2 days later, the property manager of Cassandra's apartment complex left a notice claiming they'd received complaints about an unauthorized tenant. The lease specifically prohibited long-term guests, and violations could result in eviction. "This is too much," I said, pacing Cassandra's living room. "They're going to get you evicted because of me." Before she could respond, my phone rang with a call from Diane. "Lauren, I've got bad news," she said without preamble. "Someone submitted an anonymous tip to the police, suggesting you might have prescription medications belonging to your father. They're seeking a search warrant for Cassandra's apartment." The accusation was absurd. I'd turned over all Dad's medications to the hospice team after his death following strict protocols. But the implication was clear: Tyler was escalating to potential criminal charges. That evening, Cassandra and I sat at her kitchen table reviewing our dwindling options. The restraining orders hadn't stopped the harassment. The will contest was proceeding slowly through the courts. My reputation was in tatters, and now criminal allegations were surfacing. "Maybe I should just sign over the inheritance," I said quietly. "Is keeping Dad's house worth all this?" "This isn't just about the house anymore," Cassandra replied. "If you give in now, Tyler's accusations stand. You'd be seen as admitting guilt." The next morning, I found my vandalized car with all 4 tires slashed. A new note under the wiper blade read, "Last warning, walk away or face charges." When I reported the vandalism to the police, the officer took notes dispassionately. "Family disputes can get ugly," he commented. "Have you considered just working things out privately?" His tone suggested he'd already heard Tyler's version and found it credible. The system that should have protected me was instead viewing me with suspicion. That afternoon, I received an email from Tyler's attorney offering a settlement. I would renounce all claims to the estate and sign a document acknowledging possible misunderstanding of Dad's wishes. In exchange, Tyler would drop all potential criminal complaints. It wasn't just a settlement offer, it was barely veiled blackmail. I forwarded the email to James, who called immediately. "This is witness intimidation and borderline extortion," he said angrily. "But Lauren, I have to be honest, they're boxing you ineffectively. Without more substantial evidence contradicting their narrative, we're fighting an uphill battle." That night was my lowest point. Sitting on Cassandra's balcony, watching darkness fall over the city, I seriously considered accepting Tyler's offer. The constant stress was affecting my health. I wasn't sleeping, barely eating, jumping at every noise. The prospect of a prolonged legal battle with potential criminal accusations seemed unbearable. I drafted an email to James. "Maybe we should discuss settlement terms." I never wanted this fight. My finger hovered over the send button when my phone chimed with a text from an unfamiliar number. "Miss Hayes, my name is Harold Mitchell. I was your father's physical therapist during his last year. I've been trying to reach you. I have information about your brother and his wife that you need to hear. It's about what they did when you weren't home. I deleted the draft email immediately. One more person who knew the truth. One more thread to pull. I wasn't ready to surrender just yet. Harold Mitchell met me at a rehabilitation center where he now worked away from prying eyes. A soft-spoken man in his 50s, with gentle hands that had helped Dad maintain mobility, he showed me to a private therapy room. "I've been hearing terrible things about you," he began. "Things that contradict everything I observed in your home." "That seems to be going around," I replied wearily. Harold pulled out a small notebook. "Physical therapists keep detailed progress notes. We document everything: exercises, progress setbacks, and yes, family dynamic." He opened the notebook to show me meticulously dated entries. "I came twice weekly for 14 months. Your brother was present exactly 7 times, always briefly. But there's more." Harold turned to an entry from about 9 months before Dad died. "Your father had a breakthrough day, managed to stand with assistance for nearly a minute. He was elated, wanted to share the news. You were at the pharmacy picking up prescriptions, so he asked me to call Tyler." Harold's expression darkened. Tyler answered, and I could hear him clearly on speakerphone telling someone, presumably his wife, "It's Dad's therapist again." Then to me, he said they were too busy to come over, but I should tell Roger not to push himself since it's not like he's going to walk again anyway. My throat tightened at the callousness. "Your father's face fell," Harold continued. He whispered, "End the call," and we never mentioned it again. But after that, he asked me to note in his medical file that Tyler and Rebecca were not to receive medical information, even though they were listed as emergency contact. "Did you document that request?" Harold nodded. "It's in his official medical record at the hospital. That directive, coming from a man supposedly being manipulated and isolated, directly contradicts your brother's narrative." This was exactly the kind of evidence we needed: a neutral professional documenting Dad's autonomous decisions regarding Tyler and Rebecca. Harold wasn't the only one coming forward. After meeting with him, I received a message from Amy, my cousin on Dad's side, who had been notably absent from the chorus of relatives condemning me. Over coffee at a park bench, I was becoming paranoid about meeting anywhere private. Amy revealed why she'd stayed silent. "Tyler approached me last year about investing in a family opportunity," she explained. "He said Uncle Roger's property would be rezoned for commercial use after his passing, and family members could get in on the ground floor with Neil Jenkins' development company." Before Dad died, before the will was even read, I asked incredulously. Amy nodded. Tyler spoke as if inheriting the property was a foregone conclusion. "When I expressed concern about what you would think, he said you'd be taken care of but wouldn't be an issue. It felt wrong, so I declined and didn't mention it to anyone." "Did he approach other relatives with this offer?" "At least 3 that I know of. Uncle Roger's property is the largest single lot in that neighborhood prime real estate for commercial development." This explained the hostile messages from relatives I rarely spoke with. They had financial incentives to side with Tyler. Neil Jenkins wasn't just a random developer friend. He was actively recruiting family investors for a project contingent on Tyler inheriting the property. Armed with statements from Harold, Maria, and Amy, I began systematically documenting everything. James helped me prepare formal complaints about Tyler and Rebecca's actions, including witness intimidation, potential fraud, and filing false reports. Diane continued investigating the financial connections between Tyler, Rebecca, Neil, and city officials. She uncovered checks from Neil's company to Rebecca's brother coinciding with zoning committee meetings where he supported Neil's previous projects. "This is a web of corruption beyond just your inheritance," Diane explained. Neil Jenkins has been manipulating zoning decisions through family connections for years. I remembered my journalist training document. Everything create secure backups, follow the money, build a comprehensive narrative supported by evidence. With James's guidance, I set up hidden recording devices in my car and on my person before agreeing to meet Tyler at a public park to discuss settlement terms. The recording captured exactly what we hoped for, Tyler threatening further reputation damage unless I signed over the property and admitting he and Neil had plans in motion for years. Dad figured it out, didn't he? I asked during the recorded conversation. That's why he changed his will. Tyler's face contorted. The old man got suspicious when he found Neil's preliminary drawings in my car. I told him it was just speculative, but he wasn't buying it. Always too smart for his own good. So you manipulated his accounts while I was caring for him. Tyler smirked. Rebecca handled that part. Easy enough to access his computer when you were at doctor appointments. We needed startup capital for our investment with Neil. Each word strengthened our case, and Tyler didn't even realize he was confessing. When Diane provided bank records showing significant transfers between Neil and Tyler dating back 3 years, the conspiracy became undeniable. Neil had been paying Tyler consulting fees, while Tyler and Rebecca systematically siphoned money from Dad's accounts to invest in Neil's company, all while planning to develop Dad's property once they inherited it. This wasn't just family betrayal. It was coordinated financial fraud. James helped me compile all the evidence into a comprehensive report that we submitted to the district attorney's office, the State Bar Association, and the City Ethics Committee. The documentation was meticulous financial records, witness statements, medical documentation, recorded confessions, and a timeline showing the coordinated efforts to discredit me after Dad changed his will. This won't be resolved overnight, James warned. But the truth is now documented and filed with multiple authorities. Tyler's narrative is beginning to unravel. With renewed confidence, I used my journalism skills to create an encrypted website documenting the entire case, a digital insurance policy if anything happened to the physical evidence. I shared access with James Cassandra and 2 trusted former colleagues with instructions to make it public if necessary. For the first time since the soup incident, I felt the balance of power shifting. Tyler had unleashed a campaign to destroy me, not realizing he was dealing with someone trained to expose exactly the kind of corruption he was perpetrating. I was no longer just fighting to clear my name or secure my inheritance. I was fighting for truth and justice, the very principles that had drawn me to journalism in the first place. The investigative reporter in me had awakened from a 3-year slumber, and she was ready to tell the most important story of her career, her own. 3 weeks after submitting our evidence to authorities, the district attorney's office assigned a prosecutor to review our allegations of fraud, witness intimidation, and filing false reports. Meanwhile, James successfully petitioned the court to lift the freeze on Dad's house, allowing me to finally return home. Walking through the front door was both emotional and surreal. The house remained exactly as it had been the day Dad died, his reading glasses still on the side table, his favorite sweater draped over his wheelchair. I moved through the rooms, touching familiar objects, reconnecting with the space where I'd spent 3 intense years caring for him. In Dad's office, I noticed something odd. The family photo albums were arranged differently than I remembered. Pulling them from the shelf, I discovered several had been searched with photos removed or rearranged. This confirmed Maria and Harold's observations about Rebecca's unexplained presence in the house when I was out. I methodically documented these disturbances and added them to our growing evidence file. Every detail mattered in building our case. The following day, I received an unexpected call from the reporter who had published the story, suggesting I had abused Dad. "Lauren, this is Sam Walters. I've received some concerning information that contradicts what Tyler told me about your situation." "Let me guess," I replied. "Someone sent you our evidence package." Something like that, he hedged. I'd like to hear your side directly. The initial story may have been incomplete. I agreed to an interview stipulating that James be present. Sam's demeanor had shifted dramatically. He was now deferential, almost apologetic, as we walked him through the evidence contradicting Tyler's accusations. Your brother presented a compelling narrative, Sam admitted. But these financial records and witness statements tell a very different story. Tyler manipulated you just as he's manipulated everyone else, I said firmly. You published damaging allegations without proper verification because he's your friend. That's not journalism. It's gossip. Sam flinched but didn't argue. His follow-up article published the next day detailed the new evidence, suggesting a complex financial scheme involving the contested property. While carefully avoiding definitive statements about guilt, it effectively countered the previous narrative and mentioned the ongoing investigation. This public shift marked a turning point. Former colleagues began reaching out, offering support and apologizing for their hasty judgments. Family members who had condemned me fell silent or awkwardly attempted to reconnect, claiming they never fully believed Tyler's accusations. The most dramatic development came when James received a call from Rebecca's attorney. Rebecca wants to meet without Tyler or his attorneys present, James informed me. She's indicated she has information relevant to your case and is exploring cooperation options. The meeting took place at James's office with both our attorneys present. Rebecca appeared nervous, her designer outfit and perfect makeup contrasting with her fidgeting hands and darting eyes. Tyler doesn't know I'm here, she began. Things have escalated beyond what I agreed to. What exactly did you agree to, Rebecca? I asked evenly. She took a deep breath. Initially, just to help Tyler manage his father's assets more efficiently. Roger was sitting on valuable property while Tyler struggled financially. It seemed reasonable for Tyler to have more control. And when did managing assets become stealing from Dad's accounts? Rebecca flinched. That was supposed to be temporary investments Tyler would repay after the property development deal went through. Neil Jenkins convinced us the rezoning was guaranteed through his connections, and the campaign to discredit me after the will reading. That was Tyler and Neil's idea, she insisted. Tyler was desperate. We'd already committed funds to Neil's company based on the expected inheritance. When you received the property, instead, everything collapsed. Rebecca provided details confirming our understanding of the scheme, the systematic theft from Dad's accounts, the arrangement with Neil Jenkins, the plan to develop the property after Dad's death. She also revealed new information about Tyler's growing desperation. He's liquidating everything we own, she said, emptying accounts, taking loans against the house. Neil is threatening to expose Tyler's involvement unless he delivers the property. And the soup incident, I asked, the humiliation still raw. Rebecca had the decency to look ashamed. That wasn't planned. Tyler just snapped. He couldn't believe you wouldn't sell after everything they'd invested in the development plans. Her testimony, while self-serving, provided additional confirmation of the conspiracy from an insider. James immediately began preparing documents for her formal statement to authorities. As Rebecca was leaving, she paused at the door. Lauren, Tyler's not stable right now. He knows your evidence file exists, and he's becoming obsessive about destroying it. Be careful. Her warning proved timely. That night, my home security system installed immediately upon moving back and detected movement around the property perimeter. The cameras captured Tyler attempting to access the back door, clearly intoxicated and muttering angrily. When the alarm sounded, he fled. The police responded quickly, taking the security footage and filing a report documenting Tyler's violation of the restraining order. When they attempted to locate him for questioning, they discovered he had emptied his house of personal belongings and disappeared. Rebecca claimed ignorance of his whereabouts when questioned, revealing they'd been living separately since her meeting with us. She formally filed for divorce the following week. Meanwhile, Neil Jenkins was dealing with his own problems. The ethics committee had launched an investigation into his company's connections with city officials, and several previous development projects were under scrutiny. His company issued a statement distancing themselves from Tyler, claiming he had misrepresented his authority regarding the Hayes property. The district attorney's office officially opened an investigation into Tyler for financial fraud, filing false reports, and violation of restraining orders. With the mounting evidence and Rebecca's testimony, criminal charges seemed increasingly likely. While the legal processes advanced, I focused on rebuilding my life. I updated my resume and began applying for journalism positions again, finding a much warmer reception now that the public narrative had shifted. A regional news site offered me a contract position investigating development corruption, ironically the perfect fit given my recent experiences. Just as things were stabilizing, Tyler made his final desperate move. Without authorization, his construction company began preliminary work on Dad's property, clearing trees at the back edge of the lot and bringing in surveying equipment. By the time I discovered the activity, significant damage had already been done to the wooded area Dad had carefully preserved. I immediately filed for an emergency injunction to halt any further work, which the court granted within hours. The judge, now familiar with our ongoing case, ordered a full cessation of activity and required Tyler's company to post a bond covering potential damages. Neil's company, sensing legal jeopardy, issued another statement claiming they had no current projects involving the Hayes property and suggesting Tyler was acting without authorization. The attempt to create facts on the ground backfired spectacularly. The unauthorized construction activity provided concrete evidence of Tyler's intentions for the property and his willingness to violate court orders to achieve them. More importantly, it caught the attention of local environmental groups concerned about the destruction of mature trees in the historically protected neighborhood. They joined our cause, highlighting the broader implications of the development scheme beyond just our family dispute. The media coverage expanded, with several outlets now investigating Neil Jenkins' previous projects and their approval processes. What had begun as a family inheritance dispute was evolving into an exposé of systematic corruption in local development. Through it all, I maintained meticulous documentation. Every communication, every legal filing, every piece of evidence was preserved and backed up multiple ways. The journalist in me knew that comprehensive documentation would be our strongest defense against whatever desperate moves Tyler might attempt next. As autumn arrived, painting Dad's cherished maple trees in brilliant reds and golds, I sat on the back porch where he and I had spent countless hours during his final years. The property he had fought to protect was safe for now, though the legal battles continued. "I understand now, Dad," I whispered to the evening air. "You didn't just leave me the house as a gift. You left me a mission." The next morning, I received a call from the district attorney's office. Tyler had been located and arrested trying to cross the state line with false identification. The prosecutor wanted to know if I would be willing to testify about everything that had happened since the soup incident. "Absolutely," I replied without hesitation. "I've been documenting this story from the beginning, and it's time everyone heard the truth." With Tyler's arrest, I expected some resolution to our ordeal. Instead, it triggered an escalation that none of us had anticipated. Released on bail pending trial, Tyler became even more desperate and dangerous. Rebecca's divorce filing had revealed the extent of their financial troubles: massive gambling debts, multiple mortgages on their home, and significant personal loans. Tyler had reportedly told friends that the development deal with Neil was his last chance to avoid bankruptcy. While Tyler awaited trial, Rebecca cooperated with authorities, providing detailed accounts of the scheme and Tyler's increasing instability. Her cooperation agreement would likely reduce any charges against her, but she seemed genuinely remorseful, at least about how far things had gone. "I never wanted this level of destruction," she admitted during a deposition. Undermining Lauren's inheritance was one thing, but the threats, vandalism, and false accusations crossed lines I wasn't comfortable with. Her testimony painted Tyler as the primary architect of the more aggressive tactics, though she acknowledged participating in spreading rumors and accessing Dad's accounts. With Tyler's bail conditions preventing him from contacting me directly, he enlisted allies for a final desperate campaign. The first salvo came through Cassandra. On a Tuesday morning, Cassandra received a visit from Child Protective Services investigating an anonymous report claiming she was housing an unstable individual who posed a danger to children in her apartment building. The accusation was absurd. I had moved back into Dad's house weeks earlier, and Cassandra didn't even have regular contact with children in her building. But the investigation itself was disruptive and humiliating for her, requiring her to defend her living situation to suspicious authorities. "This has Rebecca written all over it," Cassandra said, when she called to tell me about the visit. "She knows exactly how to manipulate systems designed to protect people." The Child Protective Services investigation was quickly dismissed as unfounded, but it achieved its likely purpose, reminding us that Tyler and his allies could still disrupt our lives through legal channels. The next attack targeted my rebuilding reputation. Crudely doctored photos appeared on anonymous social media accounts showing me supposedly neglecting or mistreating Dad. While obviously manipulated, the images were disturbing and painful to see. More sophisticated versions were sent directly to my new employer with allegations of disturbing behavior not captured in our previous disclosures. Thankfully, my editors recognized the transparent attempt at character assassination and stood by me. But the message was clear: Tyler was willing to attack every aspect of my rebuilding life. The most concerning development came when James received an explicit threat to his professional standing. A formal complaint was filed with the State Bar Association alleging ethics violations in his handling of Dad's estate. The complaint contained specific details about our strategy meetings that could only have come from surveillance or infiltration of James's office. "Neil Jenkins has connections throughout this city," James said grimly when we discussed the complaint, "including apparently someone with access to my office or communications." The threat to James was particularly alarming. Without his steadfast legal support, our entire case might collapse. We immediately implemented enhanced security protocols, switching to encrypted communications, sweeping for listening devices, and holding sensitive meetings in unpredictable locations. During this period of escalating attacks, I continued investigating Neil Jenkins' business practices. My journalistic instincts told me that understanding the broader context of his operations might reveal vulnerabilities in Tyler's alliance with him. Through public records, requests, and interviews with former Jenkins development employees, I uncovered a pattern startlingly similar to our situation. In at least 3 previous cases, Neil had acquired valuable properties following family disputes that resulted in quick sales below market value. In each case, one family member had served as his entry point, convinced others to sell, and later received consulting fees from his company. Most significantly, I connected with the Henderson family, who had lost their grandmother's historic downtown property to Neil's company following a bitter estate battle 2 years earlier. The parallels were chilling: allegations of manipulation against the caregiving family member, frozen assets pending legal hearings, and ultimately a distressed sale to Neil's company after the family's financial reserves were exhausted by legal fees. "He picks vulnerable families and exploits existing tensions," Martin Henderson explained when we met. By the time we realized what was happening, we were too financially drained to fight. The Hendersons and two other families agreed to share their experiences publicly, creating a damning pattern that suggested Neil's business model depended on manufacturing family crises to acquire properties below market value. With these families' testimonies supporting our case, I arranged a meeting with City Council member Eleanor Washington, who chaired the zoning committee, where many of Neil's projects had been approved. Initially hesitant, Washington became increasingly concerned as I presented the documentation of Neil's patterns and his connections to city employees, including Rebecca's brother. This warrants formal investigation, Washington acknowledged. If zoning decisions were influenced improperly, that's public corruption. Washington arranged for me to present our findings at an upcoming town council meeting where Neil was scheduled to seek approval for another development project. The timing couldn't have been better, a public forum where Neil's business practices would be scrutinized, just as his connection to Tyler's scheme was being exposed. The night before the council meeting, I received an urgent call from Rebecca. Lauren Tyler knows about tomorrow's meeting. He and Neil are planning something desperate. Neil told Tyler that if the Hayes property deal falls through completely, he'll make sure Tyler takes all the blame for everything. What are they planning? I asked, alarmed. I don't know specifics, but Tyler mentioned insurance that would prevent you from testifying. He's been drinking heavily and has access to firearms. Please be careful. I immediately contacted the police, who increased patrols around my house and advised me to stay elsewhere for the night. I took refuge at James's home, where private security was already in place due to the threats against him. The next morning, we arrived at the town hall to find it unusually crowded. Neil was there with his attorneys, looking composed but tense. Tyler was nowhere to be seen. When my turn came to speak, I presented the documentation connecting Neil's development company to multiple distressed family property sales, highlighting the pattern of exploitation and questionable zoning approvals. The Hendersons and other affected families testified about their experiences, creating a comprehensive narrative of predatory business practices. Neil's composed facade cracked as council members began asking pointed questions about his business model and connections to city employees. When Councilwoman Washington directly questioned him about payments to Rebecca's brother, coinciding with zoning votes, Neil visibly faltered. These are complicated business matters, being mischaracterized by individuals with personal grievances, he insisted, looking increasingly uncomfortable. The meeting's dramatic climax came when Rebecca unexpectedly appeared and requested to speak. Neil's attorneys immediately objected, but the council chair allowed her statement. I've been complicit in Neil Jenkins and my husband's scheme to acquire the Hayes family property through manipulation and fraud, Rebecca stated clearly into the microphone. I'm here to set the record straight about how this company operates. For the next 15 minutes, Rebecca detailed the entire conspiracy, from the initial approach by Neil 3 years earlier to the campaign, to discredit me after Dad's death. She described meetings where Neil explicitly outlined strategies for manipulating family disputes to acquire properties, and how her brother had provided inside information on upcoming zoning decisions. Neil's attorneys frantically tried to stop her testimony, but the public setting and media presence made intervention impossible. As Rebecca concluded, Neil abruptly left the chamber with his legal team in disarray behind him. The council meeting adjourned with motions to refer the matter to the district attorney and to suspend consideration of all pending Jenkins development projects. What had begun as my personal fight had expanded into a full public corruption investigation. Outside the town hall, reporters surrounded us as Rebecca continued her public confession. The media coverage would ensure that neither Neil nor Tyler could bury the story through connections or influence. As the crowd dispersed, a police officer approached me. Miss Hayes, we need to speak with you privately. It's about your brother. Tyler had been arrested attempting to enter the town hall with a concealed weapon. A search of his vehicle revealed printouts of building layouts and a rambling letter threatening me, Neil, and anyone who perpetuated the lies about him. He's being held without bail pending psychiatric evaluation, the officer explained. Given the evidence of planning and the weapon, the district attorney is treating this as a prevented attack rather than a simple weapons violation. That evening, as news of Tyler's arrest spread, Neil's company issued a statement, severing all ties with him and claiming they had been misled about the Hayes property availability. The statement carefully avoided mentioning Rebecca, or the broader pattern of similar transactions now under investigation. Rebecca filed for witness protection, fearing retaliation from Neil's associates after her public testimony. Her attorney indicated she would continue cooperating with authorities in exchange for consideration in any charges against her. The district attorney called the next morning to inform me they were expanding the investigation to include Neil Jenkins and several city employees, including Rebecca's brother. What had begun as a family dispute over inheritance had exposed a web of corruption extending far beyond our personal situation. As I sat in Dad's study that evening, surrounded by the books and mementos of his life, I felt an overwhelming sense that justice was finally within reach. Tyler's desperate final gambit had backfired spectacularly, exposing not just his own crimes, but an entire system of corruption. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Diane Reynolds, our private investigator. "Lauren, you should know Neil Jenkins was just picked up at the airport attempting to leave the country. They found a significant amount of cash and documentation for overseas accounts in his possession." The final domino had fallen. With Neil in custody and Tyler undergoing psychiatric evaluation, the architects of the conspiracy were contained. The path to resolving the legal matters, while still complex, was now clear. Later that night, Cassandra joined me at Dad's house with a bottle of wine. To Roger, she toasted, raising her glass. "Who knew exactly what he was doing when he left this house to you?" To Dad, I agreed, who trusted me to finish what he started. In the quiet of the home he had loved so much, I finally felt the tension of the past months beginning to release. The war wasn't completely over, but the decisive battle had been won. 6 months after the dramatic town council meeting, I sat in the courthouse watching Tyler plead guilty to multiple felony counts, including fraud filing, false reports, violating restraining orders, and attempted assault. The psychiatric evaluation had found him competent to stand trial, but noted significant issues with impulse control and narcissistic tendencies, exacerbated by financial pressure and gambling addiction. The plea agreement recommended a 5-year sentence with mandatory counseling and addiction treatment. Tyler would serve at least 3 years before becoming eligible for parole, with restitution payments to follow. Throughout the proceedings, Tyler avoided looking at me. The once confident brother who had dumped soup on my head and ordered me out of his family now appeared diminished, his expensive suits replaced by standard-issue court attire, his arrogance dissolved into visible shame. Rebecca received a more lenient sentence in exchange for her extensive cooperation with authorities. Her testimony had been crucial in building cases against both Tyler and Neil Jenkins. She would serve 18 months probation, complete community service, and make restitution payments for her role in accessing Dad's account. During her sentencing, Rebecca addressed me directly for the first time since her public confession. "Lauren, I know an apology cannot possibly repair the damage we caused you," she said, her voice steady but remorseful. "But I want you to know, I deeply regret my participation in Tyler's schemes and the pain we inflicted on you when you were doing exactly what Roger needed, being there for him when we wouldn't." I nodded acknowledgement, but offered no forgiveness. Perhaps that would come with time, but the wounds were still too fresh, the betrayal too profound. Neil Jenkins faced the most extensive legal consequences. The investigation triggered by our case had uncovered a pattern of corruption extending back nearly a decade. Multiple properties had been acquired through manipulated family disputes, with city officials receiving kickbacks for favorable zoning decisions. Neil was ultimately charged with racketeering, bribery of public officials, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The Jenkins development investigation led to charges against 7 city employees, including Rebecca's brother, who had accepted payments for inside information and favorable votes on zoning matters. What had begun as our private family dispute had exposed systemic corruption affecting the entire community. As the legal proceedings concluded, I finally gained full, uncontested access to Dad's estate. The house was officially mine, as were the financial assets he had left to ensure I could rebuild my life. The inheritance that had triggered such destructive greed in Tyler now served as the foundation for my fresh start. True to my journalistic roots, I documented the entire ordeal in a series of articles exposing the intersection of family disputes, real estate development, and municipal corruption. The series received significant attention and led to a book deal, with proceeds partially funding a foundation I established in Dad's name. The Roger Hayes Elder Advocacy Foundation provided resources for families navigating end-of-life care decisions and offered legal assistance to elder abuse victims. The foundation's first initiative funded a specialized unit within the district attorney's office focused on investigating financial exploitation of seniors. Dad's house became both my home and the foundation's headquarters. The property Tyler and Neil had coveted for commercial development was now permanently protected through a conservation easement, ensuring it would remain a single-family residence with its mature trees preserved. Reconnecting with extended family proved complicated. Many who had believed Tyler's accusations and participated in ostracizing me now sought reconciliation, offering awkward explanations for their behavior. We didn't have all the information, my Aunt Martha explained during an uncomfortable lunch. Tyler was very convincing. He was convincing because you wanted to believe him, I replied. Because there was something to gain by siding with him. These conversations were difficult but necessary. I established clear boundaries with relatives who had abandoned me at my lowest point, welcoming those who demonstrated genuine remorse while maintaining healthy distance from those seeking convenience rather than true reconciliation. Through it all, Cassandra remained my steadfast supporter. Her unwavering friendship during the darkest period of my life created a bond deeper than any biological relationship. "You're the sister I choose," I told her during a quiet evening at the house. More family to me than Tyler ever was. James also became part of my chosen family. The attorney who had believed in me when evidence was scarce continued providing legal guidance for the foundation, while becoming a trusted friend and mentor. His integrity during our ordeal restored my faith in the legal system that had initially seemed stacked against me. Maria, Jimenez, Harold, Mitchell, and the other professionals who had cared for Dad and later testified on my behalf became regular guests at monthly dinners I hosted, creating a community of people united by their commitment to compassionate elder care. As my professional life rebuilt, I found new purpose, combining journalism with advocacy. The skills that had served me during my reporting career, investigating complex systems, documenting evidence, crafting compelling narratives, now served a more personal mission of protecting vulnerable seniors from exploitation. One rainy afternoon, while organizing Dad's belongings, I discovered a sealed envelope taped to the bottom of his desk drawer. My name was written on it in his distinctive handwriting, the letters slightly shaky from his condition. Inside was a letter dated 2 weeks before his death, written during a period when he still had some hand mobility with adaptive devices. Lauren, asterisk. If you're reading this, the events I feared have likely come to pass. I discovered Tyler and Neil's plans for this property when I accidentally found development drawings in Tyler's car. When confronted, Tyler claimed they were just speculative, but I knew better. Asterisk. Asterisk. I've changed my will to protect this home and to ensure you receive what you deserve after your selfless care these past years. Tyler will not accept this easily. He and Rebecca have become entangled with Neil Jenkins in ways that have changed them fundamentally. Asterisk. Asterisk. I'm sorry for the burden this places on you. Know that I trust you completely to handle whatever comes. Your strength, integrity, and persistence have always made me proud, even more so during these difficult years. Asterisk. Asterisk. Remember that family is defined by love and loyalty, not merely by blood. You've demonstrated both, while others failed that test entirely. Asterisk. Asterisk. With all my love and confidence, asterisk, asterisk, Dad, asterisk. The letter confirmed what I had pieced together. Dad had discovered the scheme and deliberately changed his will to prevent it. He had anticipated Tyler's reaction and trusted me to withstand the storm that would follow. His final act had been not just generosity toward me, but protection of the home he loved from those who would destroy it for profit. In the year following the legal resolutions, I slowly transformed the house to reflect both its history and my future. Dad's accessible equipment was donated to families who needed it. His bedroom became the foundation's office space. The gardens he had loved were expanded and maintained, with a memorial bench placed under his favorite maple tree. On the anniversary of Dad's death, I hosted a dinner for my chosen family, Cassandra James, Maria Harold, and others who had stood by me during the darkest times. As we gathered around the dining table where Tyler had once dumped soup on my head, I served a symbolic meal, homemade chicken soup, as the first course. Some of you were there the night my brother gave me 15 minutes to leave what he called his family, I said, raising my glass. Instead, I found my true family, the people in this room who chose loyalty, integrity, and justice when it wasn't easy or convenient. We toasted to Dad's memory and to the unexpected journey his final wishes had set in motion. The inheritance that Tyler had coveted so desperately had become something far more valuable than mere property or money. It had become a mission, a community, and ultimately a redemption. As the evening wound down, I stepped onto the porch alone, looking up at stars barely visible through the city lights. The journey from that humiliating soup incident to this moment of peace had been painful beyond description, but I had emerged stronger, wiser, and surrounded by people who embodied the true meaning of family. "Thanks, Dad," I whispered to the night sky, "for knowing exactly what you were doing." Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you thought you could trust? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that sometimes family is defined by love and loyalty, not blood. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, sometimes when people show you who they are, the greatest act of self-love is believing them.